Hi, my name's Casey Landry. The book I chose was Coming Home by Floyd Cooper, and it depicts the story of Langston Hughes from a child. When he was a child, he lived with his grandma, Mary Langston, and they lived in Lawrence, Kansas, and he was a dreamer. He never felt like it was home. He always wanted home to be with his parents, but they lived in different places. So he would go to the railroad track and he would chase the railroad, and he would dream, and then when it would go away, he'd have to come back home. His grandma used to tell him all these stories of all these famous reformers who were prominent in the freeing the slaves and all these different things, and he even included stories of how she was in the Underground Railroad, and he loved to hear these stories. One time he even met Booker T. Washington, and as he grew up, he went and visited his mom, and he would go everywhere. He loved going to the library. He loved going to watch her sing because she was a musician, and he loved going and exploring the town. And he would go back home to his grandma because that's where he lived, but he never felt like it was home. And when his grandma grew old and she stopped telling him the stories that she always told, he went and moved in with his aunt and uncle, the Reeds. And the Reeds, he finally felt as if he had a home, and he grew in knowledge. He went to school, and he was growing up, and he became one of the most known poets in his class. And he would go and bring his friends back to the Reeds' front porch and tell of the stories that his grandma used to tell him, of all his uncles and his grandma, and the time he met Booker T. Washington. And as Langston grew older, he began writing more poetry, and he became a well-known poet. And he discovered the true meaning of home wasn't a location. He discovered that it was a feeling that you got. And he found that in writing to different cultures. He wrote poems so that people would understand all around the world, and he reached people all around the world. So this is Coming Home. It is a great book. I loved it. The artwork in it, the wording, everything about this book is beautiful. And so this is the book for our activity. This is what you would start reading. You'll read this to your kids, and then we're going to go off this book. And for our activity today, we're going to, after you read this, you're going to look at how Langston ended up defining home, because at the beginning he defined it as a place, and then at the end he grew in the knowledge of what it truly meant. And since he was a poet, we're going to be using that to learn more about how we can use poetry and our definitions of home to expand on this activity. So the first thing you're going to do as a family is you're going to write down your definitions of home. As you can see, I had a group of friends, and my nieces and my sister, we wrote down our definitions of homes. For example, my niece said the place where mommy and daddy live, okay? And then my older sister said the place where you go to sleep at night and you feel safe. And then my youngest niece was like, where my puppies are. So it's all these different definitions, and then you go down, and it's home is where the feeling of security and where you can be yourself. So there's all these different definitions, and it's so cool because we're all different people, and like this book teaches us that he had a different background, and yet he was able to reach people from all around the world with his definitions and the way he wrote, and through his poetry and his books and all the things he did. So what we're learning about is how we can unite together, although we're all different and we all have different definitions of home, but like it shows us the difference in us and how we can unite and believe the same thing. So you're gonna write your definitions of home on a piece of notebook paper. So the supplies you would need is this notebook paper, and then you're gonna need pens, colored pencils, whatever you want. So after that, you're going to come up with a poem. Mine it doesn't rhyme. It doesn't have to rhyme. I wrote home, and then I wrote everybody's definition. So mine is Home by Casey Landry and Family and Friends. It says, home, the place where you reside. Home, the comfort of unity, love, and family. Home, a stable foundation found in people, not in a building. Home is always welcoming. Home, the feeling of security and ability to be yourself. Home, where the heart is. Home, found in a person, feeling of security and safety. Home, where mommy and daddy live. Home, a safe place to sleep at night. Home, a place where you are secure and comforted. And then I wrote home is home. That was the ending. So this was my poem. It doesn't have to rhyme. I just thought it was cool to, as a family, you can come up with your theme. Do you want it to rhyme? How you want your stanzas to look? You'll write this, and then that's your activity. You can make it colorful however you want on just a piece of paper. And then my nieces and my sister, I had them use colored paper and markers or colors, and they drew what home looked like to them. So this is my nieces. She drew home, and she drew everybody who lives at home. She wrote her name, and she believes that home is colorful and beautiful and a place where all family is. So she even drew our dogs, and this was hers. And then my sister drew her dream house. So it's like a blue house with a fence around it. So this is a cool activity where you can come together and define home individually, but then bring it all together and understand that we're all different. We all have different definitions, but we're still one people. And so this is our activity, including the poem. And it's really fun, and it's very simple. You don't really need anything. You don't have to buy anything. All you need is a piece of notebook paper, a colored paper and colors, markers, and a pen. And then you can go off of that. And hopefully you'll be able to connect it back to the book, because he defined home differently from the beginning to the end, and he was able to relate to people from all over the world when he wrote his poetry. And so that's our goal, is to understand that we're all different, but we're all the same.